Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is another episode of A Different View. I'm on Treasure Island. Behind me is San Francisco. I really think America is a lot like Treasure Island sometimes because we get a different view of the world from America, and we get a different view of the city from Treasure Island. Right now, we're about 10 days out from a presidential election that will probably change everything for America. We have a couple of different choices. We have two major candidates, and we have a country that doesn't really seem to know where it's going right now. And one of the things I think a lot of people aren't talking about or even thinking about is that we're trying to figure things out on a national basis, but this isn't really about the nation as a whole. What happens is about the nation as a whole, but this election is probably going to come down to 5 states. It's going to be about Pennsylvania. It's going to be about Wisconsin. It's going to be about Minnesota. It's going to be about Michigan, and it's going to be about Florida. Treasure Island doesn't really play into this. California really doesn't play into this. This is a safe state. It's been a safe state for Democrats for about as long as I've been alive. I can't even remember the last time a Republican was a contender in this state. But Minnesota is strange because Minnesota shouldn't be in play. But I actually think Minnesota is in play. Minnesota's been voting for Democrats for pushing 40 years, maybe a little bit longer. And Minnesota is considered a liberal bastion. I mean, Minnesota is liberal. They're not liberal the way people in California are liberal. They're liberal because they actually do believe in fairness and doing the right thing and equity. They're not liberal in the I was in an ashram back in the 60s kind of way that people in California are liberal. Minnesotans are liberal because they believe in fairness. Minnesota is the peaceable kingdom. But in this year, 2020, Minnesota stopped being so peaceful. Minneapolis, St. Paul, suddenly the peaceable kingdom wasn't peaceful anymore. And I think a lot of people in Minnesota realize that their liberal values aren't the values of the new left. So I think this year, Minnesota may be in play. And if Minnesota suddenly becomes a flip state, if Minnesota goes red, everything changes because everything already changed. And we're just going to notice what people in Minnesota noticed a couple of months ago. Florida's always a flip state. Florida is always a little tight and always a little weird because Florida has weird demographics. Florida has a lot of retirees from the Midwest. It has like every retiree from New York. All of my grandmother's friends ended up retired down in Florida. It has native Floridians, and it has a lot of Cuban refugees and Haitian refugees and Dominicans. So in Florida, the concept of communism and socialism and democracy, those are living ideas to people. These aren't campus radicals who think socialism is cool. In Florida, you have voters who actually fled socialism and they don't think it is cool. So Florida is kind of interesting because in Florida, it's a real story for people. It's not theory. They've lived socialism and they don't like it. Well, people on college campuses like it, but a lot of people in Florida don't. So weirdly enough, even though everyone in the media right now is saying Florida's tight and Florida's this and that, I actually think Florida is going to be a solid win for Donald Trump this year. I may be really wrong about this. Who knows? Anything can happen in Broward County. But Florida, I think Florida's, in the bag for Donald Trump this year, which is kind of weird. Now, Michigan is an interesting story. Because Michigan is working class country. Michigan is, big trees and big lakes and the Iron Range. And people up in Michigan, they're not scared of a little crude language. They don't care about what's seemly. They care about jobs. They care about America. They care about their families. They care about, individual rights. And I think the media is getting everything wrong in Michigan because the media assumes that everybody is like them. They assume everybody cares about seemly language and perfect hair and, who you know. And in Michigan, a lot of people in Michigan, They see a tougher world because they live in a tougher world. The winters are hard. The work up in the Iron Range is really hard and always has been. And they believe in solid values. And so for them, they're going to have to make a choice, and it's going to be a weird choice. So I think Michigan is in play. Now, Pennsylvania is an interesting story because Pennsylvania is a lot like New York State. And I've never lived in Pennsylvania, but I've lived in New York State. And when I say New York State, I do mean New York State, not New York City. Because New York City is the tail that wags the state of New York. But upcountry, upstate, New York is different. And Pennsylvania has a lot more rural people than New York State does. So outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, those voters matter in Pennsylvania. And a lot of the voters in, rural Pennsylvania are a lot like the people in upstate New York. They like to hunt, they like to fish. There's lots of small farms. There's a lot of working people. There's a lot of people who've really seen their industries hammered for 35 and 40 and 50 years because, there was steel and there was lumber and they built furniture and they made cabinets and other things. And suddenly, the last 15, 20 years, practically everything is coming in on big container ships. And not that many people in politics seem to care that much about, losing 1 million jobs in rural America or small town America. But if you live in rural America or small town America, you care a lot. You care a lot about that. Oh, yeah, and you also care how much your heating oil in the winter costs because here in California, it's not a big deal. If you don't turn the heat on in the winter, you just, put on another sweater. In Pennsylvania or upstate New York, you don't have the heat on in winter, your pipes burst. They freeze. It's cold. So when the price of heating oil goes up because somebody decides the Green New Deal really, really matters a lot more than somebody's grandma's ability to buy heating oil, it gets cold and nasty in the winter. Really cold and nasty. So I think Pennsylvania is really going to matter this year. I think Wisconsin may matter too because Wisconsin isn't Illinois. I mean, talk about something obvious, but Wisconsin isn't Illinois. You cross the state line from Illinois to Wisconsin. You cross from a state that's sort of dominated by Chicago to a state where small towns matter. And a couple of months ago, Kenosha, Wisconsin had almost a week of violent, murderous riots. And weirdly enough, I've been to Kenosha. Stuff like that really isn't supposed to happen in Kenosha. I mean, Kenosha's kind of nice. I mean, or at least it was kind of nice. When I was a teenager, I rode my bicycle around down there. I had ice cream in Kenosha. They used to build cars in Kenosha. They used to have the Hornet plant in Kenosha. But, this summer of 2020, they had violent riots in Kenosha. Stuff like that is not supposed to happen in Kenosha. And I suspect there are a lot of people in Wisconsin who said, what the heck just happened? Because I'm not even in Wisconsin, and I said, what the heck just happened? That's Kenosha. That isn't supposed to happen in Kenosha. So I really do think this is going to come down to Pennsylvania and Florida and Wisconsin and Michigan and even Minnesota. And Minnesota hasn't voted for a Republican in so many decades that nobody serious is even thinking Minnesota is a flip state, but it could be. It could be really close, which could make this year so interesting. So, if you think I'm right, if you liked it, please subscribe to A Different View.